So this is Z Fold 3 versus the S22 Ultra. In this video, I'm going to help you decide which one you should be getting, whether it's Samsung's best foldable or Samsung's best smartphone, which one you should get, or if you already have the Z Fold 3, should you upgrade to the S22 Ultra? Let's talk about it. Starting off the design, obviously the Z Fold 3 is a foldable and the S22 Ultra is a regular smartphone, but there are some similarities, and that's just in the finish of the black glass. So they're both a frosted glass finish, but that's pretty much where the similarities end. So the color on the Z Fold 3 is a phantom green colorway, which is just a dark green, versus the S22 Ultra's green. It's more of a dark teal, which I actually prefer a lot more. But the S22 Ultra is a boxy design phone. It's got sharp corners, it's got a flat sides, and it's got curved screen on the front and on the back. So it's like a Note-like design. So if you've ever used a Note before, that's what it feels like in hand and what it looks like. But overall, it's a very well premium phone. Z Fold 3, obviously, like I said, it's a foldable. So it's a foldable phone that opens up. So when it's folded, it's a bit thick. You know, it's a chunky little phone. But then once you open it, it's relatively thin, a little bit thinner than the S22 Ultra. And it's pretty well evenly distributed in the weight when you're holding it in hand. And the hinge itself is also really nice still. It's still holding up really well, holding its spot whenever you fold it at a certain angle. But I will say that when you go to open it, you have to make sure that you push it a little bit the whole way. That way it lays flat when you go to open it. And the hinge is also glossy itself, so when it's folded down, you can see that glossy design, and the rest of the sides are all matte, which I actually wish they would have implemented that into the other phone. So I wish that the actual sides of the S22 Ultra were matte versus glossy on here. The camera rays are also both vertical, so if you lay them on the table, they're both going to rock a bit. S22 Ultra rocks a little bit more, but if you put a case on them, you're not going to have that issue at all. But I'll lead to that issue. So I'm not a big fan of using cases on my Z Fold 3. Personally, they add a little bit more bulkiness. It's already a bulky phone when it's folded down, so I'm not a huge fan of adding more bulkiness to that, or more weight to say, because both of them are pretty heavy. Just cases in general, not a fan of. Because there's a couple different cases. So there's some that are 2 pieces, some that are 1 piece, some that protect the hinge, some that don't protect the hinge. Personally, I've used one case that didn't protect the hinge. It was a Spigen, I think, Ultra High Clear case, and that thing broke on me 2 times. So the front cover part just broke. So after that, I gave up on cases and went with a skin. So basically, the reason I got a skin was just to add some grippiness to the phone, because honestly, it's pretty slippery, and so is the S22 Ultra, but I figured, you know, I don't want to add a case to it, so I might as well just go for skin. On the S22 Ultra, I'm better off just using a case because it feels pretty comfortable with just a case, just to add some grippiness to it as well, and protection. But yeah, since I have no case on the Z Fold 3, I do have a couple scuffs on the hinge itself, so that's something to keep in mind. It has been pretty durable so far, but you know, it's a foldable phone, so I don't know how long it's going to last as far as durability-wise. Both of them are water-resistant, but the Z Fold 3 is not dust-resistant, which is like its Achilles heel. So if dust gets inside of here, inside the screen, inside the hinge, it could potentially ruin it, but who knows what's going to happen with it. I will say durability-wise, the inner display, there is some white marks going on inside the display where the crease is at. Or not white marks, but like colored marks. I don't know what's going on. I've talked about it before in a different video, so I'll have to keep an eye on that. So far it hasn't really gotten worse, but just something to keep in mind that durability, I don't know how well this is going to stand up to time. So just keep that in mind. But both of them both have USB-C at the bottom, both have fire-in speakers, so they're both loud, proud, and good, well-rounded. Sound pretty good overall. There's honestly not much of a difference there, so when it comes to watching videos, listening to music, they both sound really good. And both of them have the power button and the volume rocker on the right-hand side, although the Z Fold 3 has a fingerprint sensor embedded into the power button. So the S22 Ultra has it underneath the display with an ultrasonic display, or ultrasonic fingerprint sensor. Both of them are pretty good, very reliable. I will say the Z Fold 3 is ever so slightly faster, and it's easier to turn on without turning on the screen. Literally, you just lay your finger on top of the finger sensor and it automatically go into the phone with no issue. S22 Ultra, you can do the same while the screen is off, but you have to be a little more mindful of where you're pressing to make sure you actually put your finger where the finger sensor is at. But otherwise, both of them are fast and good and reliable. And they also both have facial recognition, so if you like to use that, it's not 100% secure, but it's still pretty reliable and useful when you have to. And they both have the SIM card slots, but in different positions. So at the bottom on the S22 Ultra and on the side on the Z Fold 3. So that means they're both capable of up to 5G, which is pretty good. And then the S22 Ultra also has an S Pen. So if you like using the S Pen, you might like the S22 Ultra a little bit better. Both of them are compatible with the S Pen, but different S Pens. So the S22 Ultra, you know, you can use the S Pen inside the phone, or other S Pens. So it can use the S Pen Pro, S Pens found inside the tablet series, S Pens from the S21. So pretty much every S Pen is compatible with the S22 Ultra. So it's pretty nice. I like to use my S Pen transitioning between my tablets and my phones. So I like that, being able to scroll around. And I don't necessarily take a lot of notes, but being able to just hit the X on ads or just scroll around is basically what I do. You also have these Bluetooth capabilities for air gestures and stuff like that. I don't take advantage of those, but again, they're there if you want to use them. Z Fold 3, on the other hand, uses a special Z Fold Edition pen, which is, okay, I guess. So if you have other S Pens, you can't really use them on this display, and only the inner display is compatible with the S Pen. The outer display, cover screen, does not take the S Pen at all. So the S Pen, again, is only compatible with the inner display, with the Z Fold Edition or the S Pen Pro, and just turn the toggle on for the Z Fold Edition S Pen. It just makes the S Pen a little bit more lighter and doesn't press down too heavily on the screen itself, because this is a flex type of display, so it could ruin it if you press something sharp up against it. So here's how I'll look at it. So if you're already an S Pen user, you're probably gonna like the experience on the S22 Ultra a little bit better. Personally, that's how I am, just because I like to use other S Pens on the S22 Ultra. But if you don't already have an S Pen or never used an S Pen before, then you might like it better on the Z Fold 3. Because if this is your only device with an S Pen, then you get a bigger canvas to draw on, better display, not really a better display, but just a bigger display to be able to draw on, take notes on. You might like that better, albeit you have to carry that S Pen either just loose with you or in a case. I definitely don't recommend the Samsung case. It's not that great. So if you can get a third-party case, I would definitely recommend that instead. Or, like I said, maybe you want that S Pen with you at all times. You don't have to worry about whether you lose it or not. So maybe the S22 Ultra is better. But in my opinion, if you already have an S Pen, I definitely would just say go with the S22 Ultra. But if you don't have an S Pen, maybe you'll like it better on the Z Fold 3. And as far as the displays, the S22 Ultra has a 6.8-inch 1440p 120Hz AMOLED display, versus Z Fold 3 here that has two displays, a 6.2-inch on the front cover with roughly 1080p 120Hz AMOLED display, and then the inner display is going to be a 7.6-inch 120Hz 1440p AMOLED Flex display. So all three of them are going to look really good, and all three of them get plenty bright enough, especially when you're using it outdoors. You'll get by easily. But overall, they're both great for watching videos. So on the Z Fold 3, obviously you get the option to use the bigger display, but depending on which aspect ratio video you're watching, you might get some black bars. You also have the under display camera on the Z Fold 3 and a crease. So if those things potentially might bother you, I definitely wouldn't consider this phone, because those sometimes get in the way. Honestly, I get over it. I just look at it and I'm just like, oh, cool. And then just get over it. So it's up to you to decide if it's going to bother you or not. But for me, it doesn't bother me. Same thing when you're using it in your hand. Like if you're running over it when scrolling around, you're definitely going to feel it, but it's no big deal after a while. And I will say that the inner display does feel a little bit plasticky compared to like the cover screen or the screen on the S22 Ultra. So, but it's no big deal. Again, I get used to it. It's not as sticky as I thought it was going to be, but it still feels a little bit plasticky. As far as everyday usage performance, honestly, both of these devices perform really well. You got the Snapdragon 888 with 12 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of storage on the Z Fold 3 versus the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 with 12 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of storage on the S22 Ultra. Now, this is the second tier versus the base model that only has 8 gigabytes of RAM and 128 gigabytes of storage. So this is the second one up with an extra 4 gigabytes of RAM. So just comparing those two devices, honestly, both of them, like I said, run really well. So whatever I throw at them, whether it's games, watching videos, multitasking, whatever I'm doing, I'm gonna get a good experience on both of them. But when it comes down to the differences, it's gonna be the UI experience, or basically the user experience. So obviously it's a foldable phone, so you got different ways of using this phone versus the S22 Ultra. It's what you expect. It's just a regular smartphone. Everything should function how you expect it to function, albeit with an extra added feature with the S Pen. So both of them are running Android 12 right now with Samsung's One UI 4.0 on the Z Fold 3 and then One UI 4.1 on the S22 Ultra. I'm sure you'll get One UI 4.1 as soon as it's optimized for a foldable device. Only difference I see is just small UI elements. Everything else looks pretty much the same functionality. Not much of a difference there. But this S22 Ultra, like I said, it's what you expect. So all my daily tasks that I do, whether it's browsing social media, browsing around, scrolling, switching apps, playing games, taking photos, watching videos, everything works and runs fantastic on here. I really shouldn't have to say much more, because it just performs like you expect it. And you got that S Pen, so if I take notes on a daily, then you can easily do so with this phone. yeah, that's honestly a great performing phone. What I do here is mostly just light multitasking. So I'll split screen the phone when I'm using 2 apps at a time. Sometimes I'll drop in a 3rd app, or sometimes I'll just use picture-in-picture with YouTube. But otherwise, I don't go crazy on here. I just like to keep it basic and simple, but it definitely handles everything I throw at it for sure. The Z Fold 3 on the other hand, it's a little bit more versatile. So you get a little bit more of a ability to do a few more things if you want to. So on the cover screen, I only do a few things. So I'll respond to a quick text message. I'll open up YouTube and select a video, switch a song on Spotify. If it's just one app that I'm working on, I'll use the front cover screen. If I'm gonna be multitasking, that's where the inner display comes into play. So you can multitask by doing 2 apps at a time, either side by side or up and down. You can picture-in-picture, you can do 3 apps if you want to, you can drop multi-windows. It's up to you how you want to multitask. But personally me, I usually just use 2 apps at a time and then sometimes do 3, sometimes I'll drop in another window. So the only time I'll ever drop in a window and use 3 apps at a time is when I'm doing finances and stuff like that, checking out my banks. So I'll open up all my bank accounts and then drop in a calculator to do some calculations. But otherwise, I'll be watching a video and playing a game at sometimes. I'll usually be browsing Reddit and also watching a video, or you can do browsing 2 shopping apps at a time, comparing prices and stuff like that. There's so much you can do and so much possibilities that you can come up with the Z Fold 3. I also heard that these are great for emulation. So if you are into emulating, I don't know, Game Boy games, DS, stuff like that, this will be better because you can use this almost like a small mini DS, which is pretty cool. But overall, it's great, and the only reason this is possible is because Samsung takes it into their own hands. In the settings, you have the ability to force all apps to go into multi-window mode. Same thing on the S22 Ultra, but it makes more sense on the Z Fold 3 because you can multitask better on the Z Fold 3. So going into labs and features, just switch on multi-window for all apps, and that forces all apps to go into that mode. Same thing with flex mode. So flex mode is basically you allow the phone to go into like a propped kickstand mode. Basically allows you to watch whatever you're doing or whatever app you're using to go into this first half of the screen and leave the bottom screen pretty much just for some small settings. So that's great for a lot of streaming apps. So some apps are already optimized, such as YouTube, and then some aren't. You just have to go again into settings, go into labs, and toggle which apps you want them to go into this default flex mode, which is pretty cool. So if the streaming app you're using isn't compatible, just go into the settings and switch it on. It's very nice. It's very convenient when you're watching a full screen video. Then you have to go prop it up somewhere on the desk. You just prop it up and let it go, and it's great. It's its own kickstand. Sure, you could buy like a pop socket or a case that already has a kickstand built into it for the S22 Ultra. Yeah, fair argument, but it's convenient so you don't have to go out and buy something else. It's already built into the phone, which is pretty cool. And you can also use 1 app at a time on the inner screen if you want to. It's great for some games and some apps, but then some other apps, the UI elements start to like overrun each other, so they will be cramped in one spot, or it just looks like an oversized version of the app. So some of those apps that I don't like to use on here is like my social media apps, so Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and even Snapchat. I don't use Snapchat at all on here, because the camera quality on there is pretty bad, so I have to rely on a different phone to use that. So some apps, like I said, may not work properly on here. And the same thing with like going into multi-window and flex mode. Some apps may not function with that because some apps aren't optimized to work in those kind of modes. So just keep that in mind that you might run into some weird UI glitches and also some weird app crashes if those apps don't work. But overall, the way I look at it, both phones run great. Both perform really well, but it comes down to how you use your phone a lot. So if you're a multitasking beast, you're gonna love the Z Fold 3. But if you're just like tried and true, 1 app at a time or light multitasking type of guy, then you're gonna love the S22 Ultra. Personally, I like them both, but I definitely appreciate what each one can deliver. When it comes to the cameras, honestly, I'm not a big heavy camera user, but I'll describe the S22 Ultra as like a professional type of camera, and then the Z Fold 3 is more of a point and shoot type of camera. But either way, both of them are pretty good. Starting off the front, both of them look very good with selfies, so if you're taking portrait shots or just regular shots, they're both going to look pretty good. I will say with the Z Fold 3, you can also use your back camera to take a selfie, so if you want to use the main wide camera, you can. It does get a little bit more detail and look a little bit nicer. You can also use the under display camera, but it does not look good in my opinion, so I wouldn't recommend that. But you can also record video from your front camera, so both the 3 main cameras on the back of the Z Fold 3 and the front cover display camera are capable of 4K 30. The S22 Ultra is also capable of 4K 30, but it can also go up to 4K 60 if you want to. But either way, both of them look really similar. If anything, the S22 Ultra looks a little bit less noisy compared to the Z Fold 3 in some low light environments. But otherwise, they look pretty equally the same, whether you're recording on the Z Fold 3 or the S22 Ultra. So front cameras all look pretty good overall. As far as the back cameras, the ultra wides here are going to be relatively the same again. So the Z Fold 3 is a little bit wider with a 0.5x versus the S22 Ultra that has a 0.6x. So not much of a difference, but they both look relatively the same. The Z Fold 3 does have a little bit of color profile difference when it comes to the other lenses. So the ultra wide looks a little bit different colored compared to the main and the telephoto, whereas the S22 Ultra is more consistent in its colors when zooming in to using the other lenses, but otherwise no big deal there. The wide also looks pretty good on the S22 Ultra. It's a 108 megapixel wide camera versus the 12 megapixel wide camera on the Z Fold 3. So I did notice that the wideness was a little bit more on the S22 Ultra main versus the main 1X of the Z Fold 3. But either way, they look very similar in color, very similar in detail, and they just look, for the most part, the same. So I have no complaints on there as well. And then telephotos, where you can get the ability to zoom in a little bit further on the S22 Ultra. So the Z Fold 3 has a 2x telephoto, so 2x will look decent. But then the S22 Ultra starts at 3x with a telephoto there, and then eventually the 10x, which also uses a telephoto camera. So 10x on here does not compare to the 10x on the S22 Ultra because it's a 10x digital on the Z Fold 3 versus a optical lens on the S22 Ultra. And then you can go up to 30x with digital zoom on the S22 Ultra and eventually to 100x zoom. So whether you be zooming in that far, it's up to you to decide. I think it's still pretty bizarre how far you can zoom in, but it's still really cool. That also translates over to video. Both of them, or all three cameras here on the Z Fold 3 are 4K 30. Same thing with the S22 Ultra, but you can also go up to 4K 60 and then also the 8K. But I'm not going to be using 8K, so I'm not going to be worrying about that too much. But again, they're going to look really similar in my opinion. There's not much of a difference. If anything, the S22 Ultra looks a little bit more better with the stabilization, so it's not as shaky and also not as noisy sometimes in low light environments. But again, you're going to get good video out of both of them. And if you want that 4K 60, definitely consider the S22 Ultra. Like I said, low light and night light shots, you're going to get a better experience, ever so slightly more on the S22 Ultra, but the Z Fold 3 again looks really good as well, so no complaints for the most part there. And the Z Fold 3 also has an extra bonus feature, which is using it itself as a kickstand. So you can go into flex mode on the camera mode and be able to prop it up to film yourself or film a whole group, whatever you want to do, so that you don't have to worry about whether or not you have a kickstand for it or if you have a tripod for it. And the S22 Ultra doesn't have that, so that's a cool bonus feature as well. But overall, like I said, S22 Ultra is more of a pro-grade type of camera, professional, and the Z Fold 3 is more of a point and shoot. But if you're a heavy camera user, I would definitely say go for the S22 Ultra, but if you're not big into camera and don't really care, then the Z Fold 3 is going to be plenty good enough for you. So when it comes to battery life, the Z Fold 3 has a 4,400 milliamp hour battery versus the S22 Ultra's 5,000 milliamp hour battery. So with the bigger inner display and the smaller battery, yeah, it's going to have less battery compared to the S22 Ultra. Plus, this is a newer phone, so if you already have the Z Fold 3, that's something to consider as well. But if you're thinking about getting them new right now, then the battery life on the S22 Ultra is going to be a little bit better. So this will get me to pretty much about 10 p.m. if I'm on a heavy usage day. I'll get like 3 to 6 hours of screen on time. On a non-heavy usage day, I'll get roughly 2 to 3, and it'll end me with like 20 up to 50% battery life sometimes on the S22 Ultra. On the Z Fold 3, if I'm on a heavy usage day, I'll kill it by like 6 or 8 p.m., getting around 3 to 6 hours screen on time. Or if I'm not on a heavy or a non-heavy usage day, then I'll get anywhere from 2 to 3 hours screen on time, but end with like 10 to 20% battery life. So yeah, I definitely get better battery life experience on the S22 Ultra, but it's still pretty good on both of them. If you have a battery pack or if you always have charger around you, then the Z Fold 3 won't be much of a big deal. And both of them have reverse wireless charging and wireless charging, but the Z Fold 3 caps out at 10 watts of wireless charging versus the S22 Ultra that goes up to 15 watts. Same thing with like the USB-C wired charging. Z Fold 3 goes up to 25 and the S22 Ultra goes up to 45. So it's not a huge difference when it comes to the charging times and speeds. So it'll take roughly like an hour to an hour 15 to 20 minutes on the Z Fold 3, and on the S22 Ultra it can take anywhere from an hour to an hour and 10 minutes. So about the same. There's not much of a huge difference. So it probably has to be with the size of the battery life. So it's probably going to be about the same. So not much of a difference there. So overall, though, I will say that the battery life is a little bit better on the S22 Ultra for the Z Fold 3, but I do wish that both of them were improved just a little bit. So which one should you get? So you should get the S22 Ultra if you want a good, well-rounded, reliable phone. Whether it be social media use, gaming, multitasking, whatever you throw at it, this phone can handle it. But if you want a phone that you can multitask on, if you're a multitasking beast, trust me, you're gonna love the Z Fold 3, and you should definitely get the Z Fold 3 for that very reason. But again, I'm more of a reliable kind of guy, a well-rounded phone kind of guy, so I'm going with the S22 Ultra. Z Fold 3, I love the capabilities that it has, but social media is the one downside that I have of it. So I have to carry another phone along with the Z Fold 3. But if you already have the Z Fold 3 right now, I don't know. I think you should definitely just wait for the Z Fold 3 4 and then maybe get the S22 Ultra after that if you are in the middle of thinking about that. But personally, or if you want a really good, reliable phone overall, then just get the S22 Ultra. I definitely will be switching from the Z Fold 3 to the S22 Ultra because I want a good, well-rounded phone. So otherwise, that's been it. Hope you guys enjoyed, and peace.